My name is Emma Caldwell. I'm 29 years old. And this is how I went from being my family's biggest disappointment to holding the key to the entire city. Asterisk. The applause echoed around me as the mayor placed the key to the city in my hands. Cameras flashed, reporters leaned forward, and strangers clapped like I'd just saved the world. But I wasn't looking at any of them. My eyes drifted to the back of the room, where my parents stood stiffly, half hidden in the crowd. They weren't clapping. They weren't smiling. They were just there, silent, watching a version of me they never thought would exist. Asterisk. The truth is, I wasn't always someone they clapped for. In fact, for most of my life, I was the punchline in my own family. Asterisk. I still remember one night, at the dinner table when I was 16. My older brother had just been accepted into med school. Full scholarship. My younger sister held up her gold medal from the state track championship. Everyone was beaming, proud, loud with celebration. Then the mood shifted. My report card sat in the middle of the table like a crime scene photo. C's, D's, barely passing. Asterisk. My mother's jaw tightened. My sister smirked behind her juice glass. My father didn't even look at me when he said it. He just exhaled and muttered the line that burned itself into my bones. You'll never be more than a burden, Emma. You were born tired, and you'll die a disappointment. Asterisk. No one defended me. No one even looked surprised. The silence that followed was worse than yelling. It was agreement. It was acceptance. Asterisk. And I remember sitting there, staring at my cold plate of food, thinking one thing: I won't let them be right. Asterisk. That was the night something changed. That was the night I decided I would rather die proving them wrong than live quietly under the weight of their expectations. Asterisk. I grew up in a quiet suburban town in Illinois, the kind of place with manicured lawns, neighborhood barbecues, and a reputation to maintain. My parents were the perfect picture of upper-middle-class success. My father, a polished corporate lawyer who believed feelings were weaknesses, and my mother, a former pageant queen who reinvented herself as the overachieving tyrant of every PTA meeting. In a house built on appearances and achievement, I always felt like the third-place ribbon. In a family obsessed with gold medals. Asterisk. I loved art, design, buildings, the way light shaped spaces, the way lines could tell a story. I used to spend hours sketching floor plans on the backs of napkins and tracing blueprints I printed from the library. But in our home, creativity wasn't ambition. It was a distraction. Asterisk. My dad used to say, drawings don't pay rent, sweetheart. We need doctors, lawyers, winners. Asterisk. And in his eyes, he already had to. My older brother, Aaron, was practically a myth. Straight A student, varsity athlete, full ride to med school, always saying the right thing at the right time. My younger sister, Madison, was the family darling, pageant hair, perfect GPA, natural charm. She'd bat her eyes and get anything she wanted. Asterisk. Then there was me, Emma, the awkward one, the anxious one, the afterthought. I wasn't failing, but I wasn't shining either, which, in my family, meant I was invisible. Asterisk. I remember the first time I ever felt proud of something I made. I was in high school and entered a local design contest. I worked on that project every night after my homework, pouring myself into every sketch, every model. And when I won first place, I rushed home with the certificate clutched in my hands, heart pounding with hope. My mom didn't come to the award ceremony. My dad barely looked up from his laptop when I showed him. That's cute, he said flatly. but don't let it distract you from real goals. Asterisk, that moment sat with me like a stone in my chest. Asterisk, in senior year, I applied to a prestigious design school. When the acceptance letter came, I cried. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe now they'll see me. But when I told them, their smiles dropped. My dad folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope like it was something dangerous. We'll help with college, he said, but only if you pick a real major. Architecture's a hobby. You need a future. Asterisk, so I didn't go. Asterisk, at 19, I packed a duffel bag and moved out. No dorms. No tuition help. No safety net. Just me, a few thrifted outfits, and a notebook full of sketches. I worked 2 jobs. Waitress by day, gas station, cashier by night. Some weeks, I slept in my car because I couldn't make rent. Some days, I thought about giving up. Asterisk, but I never stopped designing. Asterisk, I'd take my lunch breaks to sit in public libraries and study building codes. I'd sneak onto construction sites just to watch how things were built. I took free online classes, entered freelance contests, pitched myself to small firms. I knew I wasn't supposed to win, not by their rules, but I didn't care about their rules anymore. Asterisk, at that point, I didn't want their money. I just wanted to prove I could matter without them. Asterisk. At 23, I finally felt like I was building something real. I'd landed an internship at a small urban design firm in the city. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I spent my days sketching, drafting, sitting in on meetings where people actually listened to my ideas. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was creating. I was starting to believe I might have a future that looked nothing like the one my parents tried to force on me. Asterisk, then tragedy struck. My aunt, my dad's younger sister, passed away suddenly. She was the only person in my family who ever treated me like more than a disappointment. Quiet, kind, a little eccentric. When I was younger, she used to send me old architecture magazines and tell me, "You've got an eye, kid. Don't let them take it from you." I hadn't even known she was sick. Asterisk, I flew back home for the funeral. It was strange, returning to that house with its polished floors and perfect furniture. Like grief had to dress up just to be allowed in. After the service, the family gathered, mostly to whisper and pass judgment. That's when I found out she left me a modest inheritance. Not a fortune, but enough to actually start something. Asterisk, and I had a vision. I wanted to use that money to launch a nonprofit that turned abandoned buildings into community centers. For kids, spaces for art, tech, mentorship. Places I wished I'd had when I was a teenager with big ideas and nowhere to go. Asterisk, I told my family about it at dinner, nervous but excited, hoping for even the smallest shred of support. I talked about design, about rebuilding communities, about giving kids something real. I thought maybe this time they'd see me. Asterisk, instead, my father scoffed into his drink. My mother didn't even wait for me to finish. "You'll waste that money," she said coldly, "just like you wasted our time." Asterisk, and then Aaron, the golden child, still somehow shining even in mourning, leaned forward and said, with that calm, patronizing voice he always used, "Let me help you manage the funds, just to make sure everything's safe." Asterisk, I told him no. I didn't want help. I wanted respect. Asterisk, a week later, I got a call from the bank. Confused, tense. They told me there was a pending request to freeze my account, submitted by my father. He'd told them I was mentally unstable and possibly being manipulated. Asterisk, I couldn't breathe. Asterisk I had to hire a lawyer just to access money that was legally mine. We ended up in a week-long standoff where I had to prove I wasn't a danger to myself just because I dared to dream bigger than they ever allowed me to. Asterisk that broke something in me. Asterisk it wasn't just that they didn't believe in me. It wasn't even that they tried to stop me. It was the realization that they didn't just expect me to fail. They wanted me to. Asterisk that was the moment I stopped trying to earn their approval. That was when I decided, if they were going to make me the villain in their story, I'd write a whole new one, where I came out the hero. Asterisk from that moment on, my mission wasn't just about buildings. It was personal. Asterisk. I named it Reclaim Space, my nonprofit. It felt like the right title, not just for what I wanted to do with buildings, but for what I was trying to do with my life. Take what was abandoned, unwanted, forgotten, and turn it into something alive, something that mattered. I poured everything I had into that first project. An old, crumbling grocery store on the edge of the city that had sat empty for years. Windows shattered, roof sagging, but I saw something in it. I saw potential, not just for the building, but for the kids in the neighborhood who walked past it every day like it didn't exist. Asterisk I took videos of every step, every ripped out shelf, every wall I repainted, every inch of tile I laid down with blistered hands and borrowed tools. I posted it all online, not for likes, but for proof. For the girl who used to sketch alone in her car at night. For anyone who had ever been told they were wasting their time. I didn't expect the reaction. Thousands of views, then millions. My TikTok blew up with people cheering on the transformation. Instagram shared my reels like wildfire. From ruin to rebirth. One comment read, "People I'd never met were telling me I was doing something important." Asterisk but back home, the silence turned toxic. My father told relatives I was pretending to be an influencer, that I was seeking attention, not change. My mother said nothing, but the way she refused to acknowledge my work in our family group chat was its own kind of insult. Madison posted a cryptic Instagram story about people who build their brands on pity, and I didn't need a name to know who she meant. Asterisk then the messages started. At first, it was just weird emails. Your buildings are trash. So are you. Then came the packages. Open paint cans left on my doorstep. My car was keyed one night after a late volunteer shift, and one morning, I unlocked my office to find the walls spray painted. You're not wanted here. Asterisk I filed reports. Nothing stuck. But the details. The way they mentioned my family in some of the threats. How they knew what school I went to. What car I drove in high school. It was too specific. Too personal. I couldn't prove it. But I felt it in my bones. Someone back home was behind it. Or at least cheering it on from the shadows. Asterisk I was building something beautiful. And they were still trying to break me. Asterisk but I kept going. I had to. Asterisk the more I worked, the more the city started to notice. A council member showed up to one of my ribbon cuttings, pulled me aside, and asked if I'd consider speaking at a public planning forum. 2 weeks later, I stood at a podium in front of city officials and told them about Reclaim Space. I showed them photos of smiling kids painting murals, of volunteers planting gardens, of teenagers using 3D printers to design their futures. Asterisk I got a grant the following month. Not huge, but enough to start a second project. Then a third. Asterisk I started mentoring girls from underfunded schools, teaching them design basics, how to use digital tools, how to walk into a room like they belonged there. One of them, A shy 15-year-old named Kira gave me a folded note after class one day. Inside, she'd written, "You made me believe I can do something big." Last year, she emailed me a photo of her college acceptance letter. First in her family to go. I kept that email like a trophy. But inside, there were still nights I sat in the dark and wondered, why wasn't it enough for them? Part of me still wanted them to clap for me. Just once. To say, "You did it, Em. We were wrong." I used to imagine my dad showing someone my news article, my mom bragging to her friends, my siblings calling just to say they were proud. But I realized, some people don't change, and some apologies never come. So I stopped waiting. Instead, I poured all of that ache into my work. Every building I saved became a monument, not just to the community, but to the girl they called a disappointment. The truth was, I didn't need them to say I made it. I just needed to make something that lasted, something louder than their silence. The storm came without mercy, a brutal wall of wind and water that tore through the city overnight. Roads flooded, power lines snapped. An old recreation center on the south side collapsed under the pressure, leaving dozens of families without shelter. The city was scrambling, overwhelmed, underprepared. I didn't even think twice. I called my team, unlocked the doors of our newest renovated building, and turned it into a relief shelter. Within hours, we had cots set up, food drives organized, volunteers pouring in. People brought blankets, diapers, anything they could. Local businesses donated supplies. I barely slept for days, moving from phone calls to floor mats, helping kids find their parents, comforting the elderly who lost everything. The media caught wind fast. Reporters showed up with cameras as neighbors lined up to help. Someone snapped a photo of me in rain boots, holding a crying toddler, and it ended up on the front page. It wasn't about going viral. Not this time. This time, it was about survival. About showing people what community really looked like when everything else broke down. Then came the phone call. The mayor, calm, clear, and sincere. We'd like to present you with the key to the city. He said, "You've changed lives, Ms. Caldwell." The ceremony was surreal. Held in the same government building where I once pitched reclaimed space to an empty room. Now the seats were filled, the press was out in force, and I was standing in a suit I bought secondhand, holding hands with people who had become my family, not by blood, but by choice. And then I saw them. My parents, standing near the back. They hadn't called, hadn't messaged. They weren't invited. But there they were, dressed in polite, stiff smiles like they were attending a charity gala instead of watching their daughter be honored by a city they once told her she'd never belong to. My father leaned toward a local reporter as I approached the podium. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught the sentence that made my stomach twist. We always knew she had it in her, he said, eyes gleaming. She just needed time. That's when it hit me. They didn't hate me. They didn't think I was a failure. They just hated that I didn't need them to succeed. That my success wasn't theirs to claim. I took a breath and stepped up to the microphone. The applause quieted. I looked out over the crowd, at the city workers, the volunteers, the families we helped, and yes, even them. I used to think I had to prove myself to the people who raised me, I said, voice steady, that if I worked hard enough, showed Up big enough. They'd finally see me. Finally believe in me. But I was wrong. I didn't need to prove anything to them. I paused, my eyes locking on the only two people in the room who still looked uncomfortable in the face of my success. I only needed to prove it to myself and to the city that gave me a chance when my own family didn't. The room erupted in applause. People stood. Cameras flashed. But my parents? They didn't move. Didn't clap. Didn't smile. Just stood there. Frozen. No photos. No pride. Just silence. The kind that used to hurt. But now, now, it felt like freedom. Reclaimed space didn't just survive. It soared. What started as a single building and a bold idea became a movement. More cities called. More communities reached out. We expanded nationally, partnering with local teams in Detroit, Oakland, Baltimore, anywhere hope had been boarded up and left to rot. I started mentoring young designers, kids who reminded me of who I used to be. Awkward, underestimated, but burning with vision. I spoke at universities, not with a resume full of degrees, but with proof of what could be built when someone believed in possibility over perfection. One afternoon, as I sat in my new office, a rooftop studio I had designed from the ground up, filled with light and quiet and plants that somehow kept thriving, I opened a letter. No return address. Just my name in familiar handwriting. It was from Madison. She wrote, I'm sorry I stayed silent. I was afraid. Afraid of being next. Afraid they'd turn on me too. But watching you gave me courage. You reminded me it's okay to want something different. Thank you for not giving up, even on us. I didn't reply. Not immediately. I just sat there, the letter in my hand, staring out the window at the city below. A skyline stitched together with memory and steel. For years, I tried to renovate myself for people who only saw cracks. Tried to smooth over the flaws, paint over the parts they called weak, dim down the light that made them uncomfortable. But now I knew the truth. The cracks weren't the problem. The cracks were the blueprint. They showed me where the light gets in, where the healing begins. I created a scholarship fund that year for students with disappointing report cards. Kids like me, who didn't fit the mold, who colored outside the lines because the picture in their head was too big to shrink. And I kept building, not for profit, not for headlines. For purpose. Because some of us aren't broken. We're just building in silence. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the restored warehouse, now alive with color and motion. Laughter echoed off the high ceilings as kids painted on easels, danced across open floors, and sculpted futures from clay and imagination. It used to be abandoned, a forgotten space full of dust and rust. Now it was an art school, pulsing with life. I walked slowly through the halls, watching possibility unfold in real time. On one wall, a mural caught my eye, a single cracked brick, with flowers blooming through the split. The last time I saw my father, he asked if we could start over. He said it carefully, like he was trying not to scare the moment away, like he still wasn't sure how to speak without owning the room. I paused, looked him in the eye, and said, maybe someday, but for now, I'm building foundations where none existed, and I don't have time for repairs that were never mine to make. He didn't argue, just nodded, like he finally understood that I'd stopped waiting for his blueprint. Asterisk I turned to the camera. To the lens that once captured my first before video. In a broken building no one cared to fix. Asterisk they called me the disappointment, I said quietly, as the sounds of joy echoed behind me. But disappointment built this city's future. One broken brick at a time. Asterisk.